Welcome to the podcast. My name is David Shanhun, and these are the chats I wish I could have had with someone as I've created life as a full-time musician. If you're on that road and you need a friend, or you need to hear the same stories and struggles that you're going through from another human's mouth, you're in the right place. Connect with me at davidshanhun.com and let's move you into that space where you're really thriving and sharing your gifts with the world. Let's go. Alright, welcome to the podcast. As I was thinking of what would I share this week? What do I want to talk about, and what would be a contribution to you, maybe even to me, in sharing it? And really what came through for a little bit of time before recording this was genuinely me bitching about, like, man, I don't think I want to record a podcast episode this week. I'm just gonna take a week off. I'm gonna flag it. I'm gonna, try and almost like talk my way out of it. But it is something that I'm committed to. And then in the space of that, we have this podcast, obviously, that you're listening to now. But what came through was it just is a lot sometimes. And in me recording this podcast, there's a certain contribution, there's a certain energy that I become in turning on a camera and sitting here and talking to you. There's the same thing happens when we're performing live. There's your whatever state of mind you're in, whatever day you've had, you don't get the luxury to remain in that energy, to necessarily process and be in those emotions necessarily when you're the entertainer for the day. And I recall I used to play at this little cafe on a Saturday lunchtime, from 10 till 1, and often I had done a late gig the night before, so I was turning up like coffee and maybe not my best mornings at that time, of being alert and awake at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. But I remember chatting with the chef, and one day he asked me, he's like, how do you do it? You're always out there smiling, like playing tunes, like at least looking like you're having a good time. And it hadn't really crossed my mind, because that's kind of the gig, that's the job, that's the role. And I think over time we get really used to stepping in there and stepping up. And I think for this podcast, on the one hand, I think it has some really amazing benefits. The fact that I'm here recording this podcast out of a commitment to show up, there's a different aspect of me that comes through that's like, you know what, I do have something to share. Yes, would I like to just go and have a snooze, or like maybe watch Netflix and just be like, oh, I've had a big weekend of shows, I want to just kind of blob out? Of course. And I will do that after this. But also the fact that of keeping this commitment and showing up, it's taught me that we do have this ability to trigger a different energy, a different space, and come through and share something. So in this podcast, I want to acknowledge that you can, in the snap of your fingers, but in a moment, you can literally shift the energy that you're in. And we do it naturally by being performers so often. If you're not aware of that, if you haven't considered it before, then it is that little thing that naturally happens when you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with, and then it's like, hey, it's showtime. Something in you kicks in to be like, okay, I'm gonna become this. I'm gonna let a different energy come through me to perform and entertain. maybe regardless of what thoughts you're having at that point. So I wanted to share this because having some commitment, having a goal is recording this podcast tonight means I show up in a different way. I contribute something in a different way. There's a different me that's here recording this to the bitchy me, like of even still 10 minutes ago, like kind of wanting to be like, can I put this off? Can I avoid it? Can I just part of me going, man, I really wish I'd recorded something earlier and had done a podcast that I could just be like, oh my gosh, that's right, I have that on the computer. I'll upload that. That's going to be this week's podcast, But there's also a stoke factor, and I don't think we acknowledge it a lot of times, but there's a stoke factor in me going through, doing this, recording it. I have no idea, I have no clue who will gain some insight from this podcast or this chat, but whoever it is, whoever it contributes and speaks to, there's also something that comes through for me in doing it and going, you know what, I had the choice to even do this podcast and be like, hey guys, I'm a bit tired and I'm concerned that, maybe I don't really have anything useful to say. Maybe, and I hope some of you have had this at a gig at some point where you're like, you know what, I actually did the gig in a bitchy attitude, and maybe something happens during the course of the gig, or someone gets into it and it's like, man, that was really cool, and you change as that interaction with people happens. But if you've ever also just been like, man, I'm just in a bitchy mood, and you've gone and done the gig and been like, here's a song. Hopefully this podcast helps you realize that a lot of people not in our industry have the opportunity to go through a really natural cycle of that energy. And if you're like, I've done this in different roles where it's not customer facing, it's not in the public view, and you're having an average day, and you kind of like you type whatever you need to type or whatever you're working at in that kind of bitchy vibe. I don't have a better word to put it. It's just like, it genuinely is. That's the space of how I would describe it. But for me, when I allow that space to be, it naturally disappears after a while. Like there's only so much you can just be like before you're like, whatever. I'm doing it anyway. I think as musicians, as performers, as entertainers, being in the public view, have an ability, in most cases of people that I know, to really shift that in a moment and be like, okay, yep, I'm dealing with this is going on, and I'm going to be a different me, essentially. So what I know this is me kind of just yarning. This is very much what the podcast is, but I think both sides are really healthy. It's an amazing ability to be able to do that and shift real quickly. And the flip side is, because we do that, sometimes we actually do need to give ourselves time to just blob, to just shut stuff off, and to actually feel those emotions and let them be present. Find some it's not necessarily a length of time thing, but it's an acknowledgement of even like I have in this podcast, you know what, not that long ago I was like, man, I don't know that I want to do it, and that's okay. But there's a real value to acknowledging that space and essentially owning the question, like, am I going to do it? Like, so before a gig, and I've done this actually, and I've found it really valuable, is before one wedding a long time ago now, but comes to mind, was actually recorded a video of myself in my car, just turned the video on, just for me, being like, man, I just don't want to show up today. I literally will be setting up in about 20 minutes, and this is me filming myself, if you're watching the video rather than just the audio, by the way. And I don't know that I want to play today. I just kind of want to blob out, maybe go hang by the beach, and yeah, that's where I'm at. Hit stop on my recording of my video to myself, and all it is that allows me to acknowledge what's really going on, and just, I don't have to do anything with it, but the acknowledgement has been really powerful. And then I'm like, cool, now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go and play this wedding, and who knows what will show up, but I'm committed to showing up as the best I can. And I had a really fun day, even though that was me literally 20 minutes before kind of going into setting up, just being like, I don't think I want to be here. Man, why did I schedule this? Or whatever the thoughts and feelings that kind of go along with it are. So I hope this has been of some value to you, that me being able to share these podcasts and receive your comments, it allows me to shift into a different space where I can contribute something, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful to share that sometimes. Before doing shows, I'm not in the best space, but what you get to see is the, like, hey, I think I have something to share, I'm going to share it. Here is me coming through with this message and with this topic, and it may not necessarily be the truth of the space that I'm in all the time. So, happy Monday, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week in the next episode. Ciao.